Hello, everyone. Welcome to the beginning of a new series, which I hope will be daily commentary on various topics. As many of you know, I used to do a daily commentary on the daily text, although it wasn't always daily. On average, it was every other day over the course of a couple of years. But I left off back in December. I suppose I was burned out or whatever. And I think to some extent that was the case as far as writing. Just over the years, pounding on a keyboard and sitting crunched over a laptop sort of takes its toll on me. I have to go to the chiropractor about every week, and I've been getting acupressure, and I get pinched nerves in my neck, and I've broken my back in a few places before. But it's been years, but your body isn't very forgiving sometimes. Anyway, I find it necessary to do something, and at this stage, I think doing videos is the easiest way to go for me. I can say what I need to say, and I only have to spend a short while in front of the computer editing, uploading, whatever. So I hope to not just do commentary on the daily text, but also answer Bible questions, such as I've been doing in podcasts and in the mailbag feature on eWatchman. And some days I may just speak about whatever's on my mind. But the point is to try to do a daily video. Well, today's text sort of got me thinking along those lines. I was taking a walk this morning, and I read the text, and I thought, I'd really like to comment on that one. And but I didn't want to start up the column again. And so I thought, well, why not just do a video? And the thought progressed. Why not do it every day? So I've sort of committed myself to that. Anyway, I won't read the text. You can read it. I'll copy it and post it below. But it makes the matter-of-fact statement that the kingdom has been established and Jehovah's Witnesses are flourishing in spiritual paradise. When I read things like that, it's to me, it's like waving a red flag in front of a bull. It's just like, and I've written a fair bit about it in the book and on other occasions, like in the daily commentary. I won't go into, the 1914 and the kingdom being established and all that, but I would like to talk about this spiritual paradise. It seems that the Watchtower has sort of redefined what spiritual paradise is. And they've done that in order to claim that the organization today is a spiritual paradise. Well, the Bible doesn't use that expression, but it does convey the concept. And the Watchtower is well aware of that. And, as a matter of fact, the Watchtower claims, in their redefinition of spiritual paradise, they claim that the first century congregation enjoyed spiritual paradise. But that's interesting because the Apostle Paul, in writing to the Corinthians, which was probably one of the most dysfunctional congregations in the first century, two of his most lengthy letters were to the Corinthian congregation. And he addressed some of their problems, that there were sects. Some were saying, I belong to Apollos, I to Paul. And he said, you're not thinking in agreement. The Watchtower's definition of spiritual paradise is that we all believe the same thing. Uniformity. The Watchtower boasts that Jehovah's Witnesses all around the world believe the same thing. Well, one of the reasons for that, they brook no dissent. And you know what happens if you voice any disagreement? The elders may kindly readjust you, and if that doesn't work, but it's interesting in this Corinthian congregation, not only did they have this sectarianism, but there was immorality. And Paul had to address it because they were tolerating it. They also were presided over by ones whom Paul sarcastically called the superfine apostles. And they weren't just haughty and puffed up. Paul said that they were agents of Satan, phony ministers who disguise themselves as ministers of righteousness. Paul says it's no big deal if they do that. Satan does the same thing, transforming himself into an angel of light. And the disguise was so effective, the Corinthian brothers and sisters who were under the authority of these ones who posed as apostles, they couldn't see through it. Paul, under inspiration, exposed it. Was that a spiritual paradise? Paul said, I am afraid that as Eve was seduced by the serpent, your minds may be corrupted away. There was a satanic influence in the congregation. That wasn't the paradise that Jehovah designed originally. Satan took it upon himself to ruin that paradise. So it's interesting in that same letter, the second letter, I believe, Paul spoke about being taken away to paradise, to the third heaven. And he heard unutterable words, which are unlawful to repeat. Paul had a vision of spiritual paradise, contrasted with the dysfunction of that Corinthian congregation. But the Watchtower insists year after year at every opportunity, we're living in a spiritual paradise. It's going to continue to flourish and blossom and fill the whole earth to Jehovah's praise. Well, when the Bible makes this allusion to a paradise, for example, in the 35th chapter of Isaiah, it is after Jehovah repurchases them from their captive condition. And Jehovah uses, the illustration of a lion and a lamb laying down together, and the calf and a wolf laying down together, and a boy will play over the hole of a poisonous snake. And of course, that is an allusion to the physical paradise, because in the paradise of Eden, Adam and Eve were not menaced by snarling beasts and vipers. We don't know how, but they had dominion over that. Until Satan seduced Eve, as Paul said he was afraid might happen to Christians, and then they were put out. But when God speaks about that condition again, we know it'll happen in the new world. But it is also speaking about a condition among people, that no injurious wild beasts, men, women, will harm God's people. Well, what brings that about? Well, the Watchtower says that wicked persons are put out. They're disfellowshipped. Thus, spiritual paradise is kept clean. But think about that for a minute. We know that thousands of children have been sexually abused by men, teenagers sometimes, who were among Jehovah's Witnesses. Maybe they were a child of Jehovah's Witnesses. In some cases, they were elders, ministerial servants, trusted men in the congregation who groomed children and did horrible things to them. Okay, let's say the Watchtower disfellowships them, puts them out of spiritual paradise. Does that fit the definition portrayed in prophecy? That there'll be no harm in all of my holy mountain? I mean, what good does it do to shoot the fox after he's killed the lamb? See, in the spiritual paradise to come, Jehovah will not allow any harm. There won't be any predators to do harm. Big, big contrast. And of course, the real truth is that the Watchtower has not always expelled known sexual predators. And they've suppressed information of their presence. They've tied the hands of elders to prevent them from taking it to the authorities. They've threatened parents of abuse victims with reprisals if they go to the police. And you think that hasn't happened? I was an elder, I've seen it. And I've heard plenty of stories. The Watchtower can say what they want, but the record is written in heaven. So, the good news is spiritual paradise is in the future. That's good news because many of Jehovah's Witnesses have been disheartened, stumbled, disaffected. I've heard people say, and you probably have too, if these Jehovah's Witnesses are the people that are going to be in paradise, I don't want to be there. That might be a little extreme. Many of Jehovah's Witnesses, I think, are fine people, imperfect, quirky maybe. Everybody has their burden to carry. But this nonsense of a spiritual paradise, it just doesn't work. But how does spiritual paradise come about? It's not through the efforts of humans. We don't have to worry about keeping the spiritual paradise clean by, disfellowshipping evildoers. Let me share a scripture with you. Got my little iPad here. Whoops. I'm opened up in Isaiah. I'm not going to read that scripture, Isaiah 35, because I alluded to most of it. But before I lose my train of thought here, I'm going to take you to Matthew chapter 13. And that's where Jesus gave, of course, a series of illustrations, the sower and the seed, the wheat and the weeds and so forth. And then after he dismissed the crowds, he explained his illustrations. And then he went on to give another illustration. Down in verse 47, he says, "Again, the kingdom of the heavens is like a dragnet, let down into the sea and gathering fish of every kind. When it was full, they hauled it up onto the beach, and sitting down, they collected the fine ones into containers, but the unsuitable they threw away." That is how it will be in the conclusion of the system of things. The angels will go out and separate the wicked from among the righteous and cast them into the fiery furnace. There is where their weeping and gnashing of their teeth will be. Well, Jesus had previously spoke about the wheat and the weeds, as I said, and he said that was a conclusion. When the angels go out and gather out from his kingdom all the things that cause stumbling and persons doing lawlessness. That's what makes it a spiritual paradise. When lawless persons are removed physically, not through disfellowshipping by Jehovah's powerful angels. Just like the Corinthians could not detect the cunning and deceit of those superfine apostles. So we cannot discern who is wicked and who is righteous among ourselves. And isn't that what Jesus said that the angels will go out and separate the wicked from among the righteous. And where are they? In the world? No. Jesus started, the kingdom of the heavens is like a dragnet. So all kinds of fishes are brought into the dragnet representing Christ's kingdom, the congregation. And they mingle, as Paul said to the Corinthians, excuse me. In a large house there are vessels of all sorts, some for an honorable, some for a dishonorable use. So he was acknowledging that there are good and wicked. There was no spiritual paradise in the first century, and there isn't now. But when Christ returns and initiates the conclusion in the near future, then the angels take this decisive action and remove the wicked from among the righteous. And then the righteous are ushered into this paradise, spiritual paradise, where no wicked person, no devil imposter planted in there, no man of lawlessness can influence them. Those days will be over. And this is how Jehovah collects together those who are going to inherit the new world. Well, thanks for watching. And as I say, the Lord willing, we wake up tomorrow, we'll do this again.